Hi guys, welcome to my second video on ASP.NET Core interview question. So in the first video, let me give you some recap. In the first video, I have covered all those beginner questions for .NET Core, and now we are proceeding with the intermediate questions. So let's get started here. So the first question for this category is, what problem does dependency injection solve in ASP.NET Core? So this question can come in two ways. One, what is a dependency injection? And the second thing is, as mentioned, that what does dependency injection solve in the ASP.NET Core? So we have to have knowledge of dependency injection. So I have elaborated here. So the dependency injection is a software design pattern that allows us to separate the dependencies of a class from its implementation. So .NET could provide the built-in functionality for dependencies. So for dependencies, what we have to do is we have to register them in our startup class in the services, and in the services we can register our dependencies, and those dependencies can be injected in the constructor wherever we wanted them. So the dependency actually, it what it does, it is a design pattern that allows us to separate the dependencies. So classes should not be dependent, mean one class should not dependent on the other class. So we are making some sort of decoupling with the classes. So what it solves is gives us the light coupling, not the tight coupling. Code rigidity and testing difficulties and maintainability challenges. So these things would be minimized with the dependency injection. So we have loose coupling and it was tight coupling. Code rigidity, mean code should not be rigid that we have to follow or we have to do something explicitly. So these type of things can be avoided if we use the dependency injection. So I'm just recapping. Dependency injection gives us flexibility, and our classes are loosely decoupled, and we can register them in our app settings. The second question for this category is, describe the different services lifetime in the ASP.NET Core. So as I mentioned, we can register our dependencies in our startup class. We have three life cycles. One life cycle is add transient, and it is known as transient life cycle. In this case, a new instance of a service is created every time it is injected. We are injecting in one controller and we are injecting it in the second controller. So if that service is being added as a add transient, so every time a new instance will be created. Scoped and scoped lifetime, it is known as add scoped. So a single instance of a service is created per request scope. So according to the request, instances be created. And the last one is a Singleton life cycle. So it's self-explanatory. It would have only one instance in our application. There would not be a second instance of that particular dependency. So it is a very important question. So it can be asked, what are the life cycles, service life cycles in .NET Core? So you can tell there are three life cycles: add transient, add scope, and add skeleton. So the description I have given to you. Then comes to explain the concept of middleware. Middleware I already covered in the first video, that what the actual the middleware is. Here again we are getting that question. If that can be asked, we can get the same answer, that it is a pipeline in which all the HTTP requests, they are come and execute in the sequence. So each middleware component is a class that implements the I middleware interface, because we have some built-in middlewares, but we can create our own middleware as well. So if we create our own middleware, then the class which has the I middleware as a interface implementation, that class is being treated as a middleware. So we can create our own middleware, but the middleware is the sequence of request, and it is in our startup class. Then comes what is the role of middleware in ASP.NET Core. So these things are pretty much linked together. I mean, what was the middleware, the custom middlewares, and now what is actual the role it is doing. So I have elaborated bulleted points. So intercept the HTTP request and responses. So requests and responses, they are being intercepted by the middleware, processes the request in the configurable pipeline. So we can configure multiple pipelines, and one of pipeline can give the data and send it back to the second pipeline, and the second pipeline can send back data to the client, or whatever we wanted to do, it can do in a configurable manner. Offer built-in feature like authentication, logging, and compression. That is also a built-in functionality available for middlewares. Allow custom middlewares, as I mentioned in the last question. Middleware is the interface which we need to implement. Then the custom middlewares can also be created, and they can be used wherever we need them. Extend functionality without modifying the core framework. So without changing anything, if we have the middleware and we put our custom logic over there, that can be extended. We can use so many things with that. So that is a main role of middleware in .NET Core application. The next come is what is the option pattern and how is it used in ASP.NET Core configuration. So in configuration, if you look into the configuration, you might have seen that there is a option delegates available, and with that options, we pointing and then giving so many other information. For example, we are using the Swagger, and in Swagger we are giving the option, and the options we are specifying this is a JSON file, and this would be the route or these type of things. So those are the options. In the same manner, if we're using the authentication, and defining the for example, some of the parameter that the assured should be validated, the token should be validated. So those are also known as the options. So what the options are here, that I have elaborated. So defining the strongly typed classes, you create a class with the properties represent your configuration setting. So those settings can be binded, means settings can have there, or we can have a separate class for the setting as well. So if we are binding the configuration, what we have to do is we use the I option, and then the option, mean the type of option we need to provide here, and then those option can be binded in the startup class. So that can be done with the help of I option as an interface. Dependency injection to register the I option, T option services in dependency injection container. So these are the multiple things which we can do, but as far as the configuration itself is concerned, we have in the middleware configuration available, where we provide the other information or other thing to validate regarding that service. Then comes the how to configure and manage the multiple environments in the ASP.NET Core application. So what the environments are? See, environments are, for example, we are working in ASP.NET application, and in some of the cases we need to put some debuggers over there for the testing purpose, and something we need to see only in our local environment but not in the production staging or other environment. So we have to have some mechanism to track that in which environment what should be done. So for that we are provided with the environmental variables. Those variables can be defined um, in the studio, as well as the studio instance. We have the provision, we need to right click on our project, and then project options we are getting the environment variable, and the environment variable can be defined over there, and there are so many other ways we can do it. And we can also create a separate app setting for all the environments. For example, for development we can do a app setting development.json. For staging we can do in the same manner. So because the configuration would be different and they would be treated differently, so environment wise we can change our app setting as well. Other sources, we you can also use the other configuration sources like Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is the same thing, which key value things can be stored over there, and that those can be called. The tools, consider using the tools like .NET CLI or development platform like Azure DevOps to manage the environment specific configuration and development process. So CLI we can use the CLI to make the environmental variable environmental wise changes, as well as in the pipeline for in the DevOps, for example, we can also define the variables accordingly, that during these deployment process for staging, these variables can be used; for production, these variables can be used, or these configuration can be used. So these type of things we can do it. And separate code specific to the different environment into the different assemblies or module, that can also be done. So once this question would be coming, so you should know the environmental variable, and you should know all those provisions or things which can be done with the help of app settings, key vaults, ADOS, DevOps, whatever the things you needed, those are mentioned here, and you should be answering them. Then come how to configure and manage the multiple environments in the SP Node application. So we can do it using the secret management. Use the secure method like Azure Key Vault, as I mentioned previously, to store the sensitive information like password or API keys, because we don't want to expose everything to in our code. So in some of the cases, these sensitive information can be stored outside our application, and that would be in the Azure Key Vault, where we can store all those sensitive information, and then we can use them wherever we need them. Explain the logging system in the .NET Core and ASP.NET Core application. So logging is a very important part where we need to see what's going on with the application, what happened to the application once it crashed, or what happened once we are not getting the desired result, or in other way we wanted to get the information that how our application is behaving. So on those lines, we have built-in functionality that the iLogger interface is available. We just need to just add a dependency in our application. By default it is added, we just need to call it, or it should be passed in our constructor, and from the constructor onward we can use that. And in the program.cs file, already if we create the .NET Core application, already the logger information is being stored over there, and there is a log file created automatically. And though we can have the log available in console app, or as well as in the file system, or we can also store our logs in Azure as well. So the log file is generated automatically, and that file stores each and everything. But we can also change the log.txt file to the JSON file with the format, and then we can have too many different tools available to get the report from out of that log file. So the question would be the explain the logging system, sorry, in the .NET Core. So you can tell that the iLogger is there. With the help of iLogger, we can dump the information, that can be errors, that can be information, that can be fatal, whatever type of information we are needed. And also the framework related thing, I mean entity framework related things, can also be stored over there. So these type of things can be stored, and it is a built-in functionality for .NET Core, but we have to inject the iLogger over there. Then dependency injection, it is the continuous of that. The dependency injection provide the iLogger instances code to log the application events, errors, performance related things, or whatever the things are needed that can be logged. And logging can be can have a different modes, mean it can be informative, debug, fight fatal errors, or whatever we want it, we can log there. The next question is describe how routing is working in ASP.NET, and its different type. Routing I have also covered in the last video that was for beginner level. So here I'm also covering it. So routing we can do for specifically in MVC application, we are defining an app setting, not the app setting, sorry. In startup class, we are giving the routing that it should be route like controller, then the action name, and then the ID or whatever the things we wanted to do. And the other way is routing can also be provided on conventional way, mean with the help of route attribute in top of our action or controller, as I have mentioned here, that for example we want to use the route as a annotation, and it should be product and ID. So once the endpoint would be there, then it should show that API slash product, and then the ID would be provided. So these are the different ways where we can use the routing. So these type of things can also be asked at the how the routing works. So these routings can be named for easier navigation and URL generation. So convention-based routing kicks in the first, allowed by the attribute-based, ensure the flexibility and control. So these conventional routing, they had the preference over the other routing. This dynamic system let you build clean and intuitive URL for your users. So I mean, we can have, without routing we can use the APIs, but that would be a vague, I would say, name of your endpoint. So make that clear to the user what endpoint and what is the role of that endpoint is. We need to provide the route in a very good manner, in a very conventional manner, that the endpoint should describe what it is. So that is the routing.